soldiers see the war stretching ahead of them for years.
Their nights have been violent with attack, fright, butchery, and their days sleepless and miserable with the crash of artillery. They are young men, but the grime and whiskers and exhaustion make them look middle-aged. They are just guys from Broadway and Main Street, but you wouldn't remember them. They are too far away now. They are too tired.
But there is no rest in sight. Across the world, as the Allies advance on Iwo Jima, the Japanese emperor issues an order to the soldiers of his island defenses. Kill 10 of the enemy before dying.
No sooner have we hit the water than the jet machine guns really opened up on us.
We were crawling on our bellies. Only thing I could do was repeat the Lord's Prayer over and over.
How can I feel like a hero when 250 of my buddies hit the island with me and only 27 of us walked off alive?
About the dead, whether Jap or American, there was one thing in common. They died with the greatest possible violence.
Those who had been killed by flamethrowers were burned to a black, darker than ash, scorched to a brilliant yellow.
On the most violent beaches, the dead are still unburied. We lie at night huddled in dead men's blankets, carry dead men's weapons, drink water out of dead men's canteens.
As the fighting in the Pacific reaches new heights of ferocity, in Europe, Allied soldiers enter into Germany and stumble upon the true barbarity of the Nazi state. Those who don't fit Hitler's twisted idea of a master race have been shipped to thousands of specially built camps. There, 11 million people, including 6 million Jews, have been worked to death, starved to death, or herded into gas chambers in a systematic program of organized murder.
Troops of the United States 7th Army liberated 33,000 prisoners this afternoon in the first and largest of the Nazi concentration camps. The minute the two of us entered, a jangled barrage of "Are you Americans?" in about 16 languages came from the barracks. An affirmative nod caused pandemonium. Tattered, emaciated men, weeping and yelling, "Long live America," swept toward the gate in a mob. Those who could not walk limped or crawled. The barracks had the stench of death and sickness. The crematorium and torture chambers lay outside the prisoner enclosures. Just beyond the crematorium was a ditch containing 2,000 bodies, which had been hastily tossed there in the last few days by the SS men who were so busy preparing their escape, they did not have time to burn the bodies.
From the east, a relentless Soviet advance causes a great panic migration. Millions of Germans, once settlers in the territories taken by the German Blitzkrieg, retreat into the cities of eastern Germany. Rail stations are bombed to disrupt German troop movements, killing the fleeing civilians in a whirlwind of death. The 8th Air Force joins the British in stepped-up bombing of German cities.
I saw some film taken by Germans at ground level. I cried. It was a terrible thing to see that we did that kind of stuff. but it was necessary.
Over 600,000 German civilians perish, and 20 million are made refugees. Still, as ordered by Hitler's high command, Germany fights on.
Dresden was like a moon now, nothing but minerals. The stones were hot. Everybody else in the neighborhood was dead.
Crushed between two advancing armies from the east and west, and bombed day and night, Hitler, long hidden in his underground bunker, commits suicide rather than face the ruins of his nation and the judgment of the world.
The German radio has announced the death of Adolf Hitler. German forces have surrendered unconditionally to the Supreme Allied Commander.
To the American forces still fighting in the Pacific, victory in Europe brings little relief.
No one cared much. We were resigned only to the fact that the Japanese would fight to total extinction. Nazi Germany might as well have been on the moon.
Having fought their way thousands of miles across the Pacific, the Americans assemble a massive fleet to invade the island of Okinawa, only 350 miles from mainland Japan. Japanese pilots crashed their bomb-laden planes into the American ships. The Japanese called them the Divine Wind, kamikaze, a noble name for what are suicide bombers. The Japanese fly over 4,000 sorties against the fleet. 36 ships go down, over 360 are damaged. On the island of Okinawa, the Japanese fight an equally desperate suicide defense.
The two great armies, squatting opposite one another in mud and smoke, were locked together in unimaginable agony. There was nothing green left. Artillery had denuded and scarred every inch of ground.
In the midst of the fighting, a Japanese sniper kills war correspondent Ernie Pyle, beloved by the enlisted soldiers for the poetic truth he saw in their daily lives. His final report was found unfinished in his breast pocket.
There are many of the living who have had burned into their brains forever the unnatural sight of cold, dead men scattered over the hillsides and in the ditches along the high rows of hedge throughout the world. Dead men by mass production. In one country after another, month after month, and year after year. Dead men in winter and dead men in summer. Dead men in such familiar promiscuity that they become monotonous. Dead men in such monstrous infinity that you come almost to hate them.
God, this is awesome.
Desperate to force a surrender, America firebombs major Japanese targets, cities made of wood and paper.
Looking down out the window of the plane was like looking down into what I think hell would be like. We could smell human flesh burning at 4,000 feet.
The firestorms kill civilians by the hundreds of thousands. The God Emperor Hirohito makes a brief tour of the ruins around his palace. Even after witnessing the devastation brought to his people, the emperor vows to fight on, no matter the cost. With the fall of Okinawa, America now faces the shores of Japan and the edge of reason.
Rumors circulated that we would hit Japan next. Nobody wanted to talk about that. We were fugitives from the law of averages.
Plans are made for the invasion of Japan itself. It will have to be the largest military action in all of human history. In preparation for the Americans, the Japanese government promotes a new slogan.
100 million will be victorious or die together.
In anticipation of combat losses, the American War Department places an initial order for 250,000 body bags for the dead. But the final invasion of the Japanese mainland never takes place.
Flashbang.
It was the first moment of the Islamic age, the first vision of atomic war.
The world's most destructive force, the atomic bomb, was used for the second time against Japan today.
When the atom bombs were dropped and news began to circulate that the invasion would not be necessary, we broke down and cried with relief and joy. We were going to live. We were going to grow into adulthood after all.
Just one moment, please. We're standing by in the mutual newsroom. We have another bulletin here. Japan surrenders. This is the day you wondered about on December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. You wondered about your own loved ones back there December 7th. You wondered whether they would survive it. So many of the boys will come marching home, and others will lie beneath the white crosses and stars and far fields. Places whose names we'd never heard before that Pearl Harbor day.
With these words, World War II comes to an end. At the core, the American citizen soldiers knew the difference between right and wrong, and they did not want to live in a world in which wrong prevailed. They saved humanity from the darkest of futures, shattering the visions of the tyrants who almost ruled the world, and they paid for it in blood, tears, and innocence, a struggle for freedom that took them and the world beyond all boundaries.